Welcome to Music Cosmos. My name is Bruno Justi, and I'm very excited to be here today with Greco in front of these incredible professionals to talk about music for film, TV, games, and advertising and much more. Thank you, Pedro, Gabriel, and Eduardo. It's kind of weird to say our names in English, like with an English accent, because we're all Brazilians. So the original version, Eduardo, Gabriel, and Pedro. Thank you so much, guys, for being here today. I usually share a few announcements at the beginning of our panel. So I'm going to share my screen again. I promise it'll be really quick. And once I'm done here, then we'll start and go with the questions and things like that. So sharing my screen again. Just a little, oops, sorry about that. Just a little background for those who are joining for the first time. Music Cosmos is part of Be My Ears, which is a crowdsourced feedback tool used by composers and songwriters to discover the commercial potential of their music. The platform basically generates very detailed reports based on the public and professionals' opinion. And Music Cosmos was born shortly before the great shift that we are all experiencing for the past year. And it's basically a community where artists, industry professionals, brands can get together to network, showcase their work, and learn from one another. And this is the essence of the work that we do. And although we're meeting online, everyone is encouraged to ask questions and interact with us, with the panelists, through the channels, through the tools that we have here on Zoom, the chat and the question box. Before we start, also, I always bring these numbers. I think it's super cool to you know, at least get to know a little bit about the audience that's watching us right now. So 75% of us are composers or songwriters, 14% are industry professionals working labels, they are A&R or managers, and 11% of us are only working as musicians, playing guitar, piano, or singing, or something in that realm. Today we have people from Australia, Brazil, Canada, Colombia, Croatia, France, Germany, India, Iran, Italy, Lebanon, Mexico, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Portugal, Romania, Scotland, South Africa, Spain, Sweden, Trinidad and Tobago. I think you might be right, Tobago, right? I think it's Trinidad and Tobago, UK, and the US. So it's a super cool audience. Thank you guys for being here today and for watching these later, for those who are watching these later. Another quick thing, I'm gonna share in the chat box in a bit, it's kind of a Google Drive spreadsheet just to keep the community aspect of Music Cosmos alive. We created this spreadsheet for people to add their contact information so, you know, participants can network and collaborate later in the future if you guys feel like doing that. So I'm going to share that in a few minutes. And also another quick announcement, our next panel will happen on February 20th. I think it's a Saturday at 2 p.m. We're going to have two music supervisors, Vivian and Patricia. Vivian is a music supervisor for DreamWorks, and Patricia works with a bunch of projects focused on the US and Latin America markets. I'm going to share the link here as well. And for those who love taking screenshots, do that and tag, you know, Pedro, Eduardo, Gabriel, myself, Greco, Be My Ears, and Music Cosmos. Reach out to these guys. They're available on their social media. Ask questions, connect, and let's build a big and strong community together. So without any further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And again, thank you guys, Eduardo, Gabriel, Greco, Pedro. It's a great pleasure to have you guys. Let's just start with introductions. Let's just start with Eduardo. Would you mind telling a little bit about your story, what you do.
Well, I'm a composer from Brazil. I start my career in Brazil as in the music as a DJ, and then making electronic music, and then later advertisement, and then later film scoring, yeah, films in Hollywood. Then I moved to LA 5 years later, and I'm here for, it's crazy now. I think 7 years or 6 years, but it was a blink of eye. I remember when I arrived here, GB Pedro was like a friends in the first moment here.
Beautiful.
And since then, I've been scoring like stuff for big brands like Nike, Budweiser, uh, cars. It's a lot of stuff. I still do advertisements sometimes, but mostly TV series.
Awesome. There are a couple of questions specifically for you. We'll get to those. Nice. So yeah, thanks for being here again, Gabriel or Gabriel.
Well, I'm also a composer. I'm also from Brazil. I started there. In the commercials, working for making music and other audio aspects of the work for commercials, right? So sound effects, mixing, recording, directing, singers and voiceover artists and all that. Then I got a bit tired of that and ended up moving here through a master's degree. I went to Chicago to do a master's degree in film scoring. Then eventually moved to LA. That helped me to put a foot in the door in the industry here. Then, started working with Paul Haslinger. Through Paul, I worked on the first show here. Then that, one work led to another, to another, to another. I ended up working with Eduardo. I ended up working with Pedro. Then worked with a bunch of other composers and ended up doing, projects by myself as well. And, lately I have been venturing, I'm still composing, but I have been venturing in other things that I was interested in my life. Even before I was I had contact with music, which is coding for computers and graphic design. And that is just has been blossoming as well. So the three things are happening at the same time, and it's really cool.
And you also worked on VSTs, right? You create virtual instruments.
Yeah, that's the part of the coding. Yeah, that's happening.
Cool. We'll talk about that too. Thanks, man. Thanks again for being here. Pedro.
Hey, Bruno. Thank you for having me. I'm a fan of these two guys. I've invited them both to collaborate with me on projects I've done before. So it's a good team you guys assembled here. I have the similar background. I'm a composer. I'm a musician. I started as a guitar player, play all sorts of nylon string, electric guitar, all guitars from South America, charango, rondroco. But the difference between me and them is that my career as a media composer started here. I went to Berkeley to study jazz composition and performance. I moved back to Brazil, so I was gigging 6-7 nights a week and started producing some records, mostly like instrumental Brazilian jazz type stuff. And I met my current wife 20 years ago. That was, and she wanted to come back. So I finished Berkeley. I went back to Brazil for 3 years. I met my girlfriend at the time, and she wanted to come study film. And I said, I'm not going to the East Coast. She wanted to go to New York. I said, I wouldn't go to the East Coast again, but if you want to go to California, I'm happy to go. And I'll study music production. I started like getting more and more into studios and wanting to spend more time in the studio rather than just gigging and performing. So she started film school at UCLA, and I was the musician composer of the group, and everyone needed music for their shorts or documentaries or stuff that they were doing. And so I never planned this. It was by accident. I wanted to compose, and I had studied orchestration and arrangement and primarily like big band writing and jazz writing. And I had played all sorts of like rock, blues. I had a heavy metal phase when I was a young teen, 13 to 15 years old. So I had experienced all sorts of music, a lot of Brazilian music, and I found myself doing shorts and doing different things. And each project allowed me to experience, to do a different side of my, you know, a different facet of what I do, what I like to do is like reinvent, just do new things. I'm hard to pigeonhole sometimes. And that's how it started. So I started getting the shorts, and then I went to work for very little bit with Jeff Rona, a composer who was doing a lot of TV stuff. Right as I got there, he got an ESPN show about Pelé. So I ended up, I had just gotten there, and he's like, "Oh, Pelé, you're the Brazilian guy here. Do the." So I did like half of that ESPN show and started doing more and more. And then I met someone from a trailer. Trailers at the time were huge. There were a few trailer companies, and they would hire composers to do original stuff for the trailers and to do music libraries, their own personal libraries that they would then license to trailers. So that for like a whole year and a half, I was doing trailers and music libraries and started doing some commercials. And one thing led to another until I started going back to Brazil and visiting the production companies in Brazil and saying, look, there's a lot of very talented Brazilian musicians, but there's very few people that do what I do, you know, that specialize in music for visuals, for film, and little by little, I started getting gigs in Brazil, some of the bigger projects in Brazil that I was doing there, and then doing commercials here, and that some of those projects started traveling here and opening other doors. So it was all by accident, but through a lot of hard work and being open to a lot of different things. I was lucky enough to start working on this, which is primarily what I do now.
A good accident then.
Visuals, different types, everything. But I've done everything: trailers, commercials, video games, films, TV shows, a lot of different things, which is something exciting for whoever wants to get into this. There's a lot of options, right? A lot of things to do.
That's beautiful, man. Thanks again. Thanks for sharing. There's a bunch of questions already here, aside from the ones from the list. Greco, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm primarily known as a musician, as a guitar player. I came to LA when I was not even 20 and came to study guitar, and I ended up staying. And I started working in the Brazilian music scene here in LA, and eventually started doing recordings and ended up recording with a bunch of different people, from Boys to Men to Pink to Earth, Wind and Fire. And then I toured quite a bit after a few years, and I toured with people like Shakira and Gwen Stefani and Katie Lang and Sergio Mendes. And then all the while I was producing a little bit. And then last year, March last year, the whole touring gigging industry came to a halt, and I decided to do a course in orchestration, which was something I always wanted to do, but never had the time. I was never in town. And and then we started talking about this and experimenting with virtual instruments and writing music for hopefully to be placed in media. I had done a few commercials for some clients in Japan, like Volkswagen and Yamaha and a bank that we don't have here called ESMBC or something like that. Anyway, this is it's kind of a redirection in my career as I'm starting from scratch, looking to learn and become more active in this medium.
Awesome. Beautiful. Great, guys. Amazing. So let's just start with the first question here. And again, feel free to, pick the question, whoever feels like responding. The first one was, do you need to be in LA to get visual media opportunities? Or maybe let's broaden it a little bit. Do you need to be in the US, in the major cities, LA, New York, Maybe Pedro, you mentioned a little bit, you started your career somewhere else, you went back to Brazil.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think, I mean, being in LA helps with, right now, it doesn't, right now during COVID, it doesn't help at all because you don't have any networking opportunities or any, right? Everyone's at home, I guess, especially in California. For a while, we were in more strict lockdown than most places in the US at least. But I don't think so. I think the advantage of what we do is that you can do from anywhere. And nowadays I work with a lot of people here in LA or people across the world, and I end up relating to them the same way. You know, it's hardly ever we get together or we do anything besides over the internet with FTPs and videos being sent back and forth and things like that. So it doesn't really matter where you are. Of course, being here, if there's a meeting or if there's a show that wants a composer, you get to meet with the directors, with the executive, or you get to go to the studios or meet the music team from Netflix or from whoever. It helps that they know your face, that they know you're here, that they know you're doing things. But especially starting out, I wouldn't tell anyone, oh, move to LA and then start out. The only advantage of moving to LA and starting out maybe is getting a gig with a working composer, an established composer who can give you an opportunity and an opening where you work and learn, you know, about the industry and learn how to do things. Because most of the established, the big time composers are here. So this is a good place to get a gig like that. But if you want to do it on your own, I don't think you need to be anywhere. You can do it from anywhere and just use the tools, the technology that we have nowadays to try and put your music out there and to try and access people anywhere.
Yeah, I agree with Pedro, especially now in COVID, right? But even before, I think I never had many meetings in my studio. It's always like a virtual mostly, or we had to go to the cutting room. But for networking was good, I believe. We should go to barbecue, we should go events from Television Academy or Grammy or whatever you are going. There is always people in your field that can turn into your friend and eventually working together. But good thing about LA is that the time zoning are always behind. So that's a good thing, most of the time, right? So you wake up in the morning, you have the work to do. So radio and going to bed and the work just arrived, which is a good advantage. Yeah. But as Pedro said, like remotely, it's very, very good right now. Like last year during the COVID, all the record sessions was what's the name of this application that Audio Movers, I think. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. It's like people recording from their studio, and nowadays musicians they have their studio. They can record from there. Like, it's very affordable to have a piece of gear that you can record your instruments. So it's more and more. We don't need to be together unless you are recording an orchestra.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna pick up from where these two guys, you know, their opinions and give a different angle, just to put some color in the conversation. I think they are absolutely right. You don't have to be here, especially if you're starting out by yourself or if you're doing things by yourself. But if you just look at statistics, like where is the place in the planet where you have more composers per square meter? That's LA, right? So if you want to go through a path that you go work for somebody to learn and do that, it doesn't have to be here. But if you're here, it helps, right? Because there's more people working in this particular industry of music for film and TV and games. But I think, you know, with Netflix and Amazon and all the streaming shows and these companies getting bigger and bigger and bigger and doing more local stuff, local productions will, you know, explode. They are exploding already. So again, you don't have to be here. The only thing is, at the moment, it's still the place where there's more composers you know, aggregated than anywhere else in the world. So if people want to learn from other people, yeah, you know, you may have a better chance here.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing you said, it's true. Like being together with all these people, I think we evolve faster because we have access of
For sure.
information and knowledge way faster. Like you go have a coffee with your friend and he tells you there's a new technology I'm using, and then there's more people doing the same thing, which increase that possibility.
Yeah, and understanding the standards of the industry, how deliveries are made, how, like, if you work for a composer, you start seeing how, because if you're just in your studio and you're trying to figure out how to do everything from scratch, it's a much more daunting task, right? You're going to do it your way. But if you're here and you start seeing how other composers deliver stuff, if you go to a mixing session, you see how it works. You go into a meeting with or into a spotting session where you guys spot where the music goes into a show. Especially, I mean, if you get a show, like when I was doing Narcos, we had spotting session every 2 weeks in a studio here in California. So I'm sure we would have figured out a way to do it if I wasn't here, but usually for like major shows, they want, and before COVID, we'll see how it works after COVID. Before COVID, we would go and get together with the showrunner, sometimes the director of that episode, so other producers from the network, and everyone would like say what they were looking for in the music and what. So it was very helpful that I was here. Everything was here. And actually my career started here. So I've never done this from anywhere else. So I wouldn't even be able to tell you differently, but I agree with the learning curve and with the industry standards, with anything that you need. Like if you have a problem with equipment, or you have a problem with, you need a mixer, or you need a tip from you can reach anyone here. You know, all the top guys are here, and all the guys who work with the top guys and know a lot of stuff that you can call and get help are here too. So it's useful to meet and to get the experience of seeing how the industry really works, because it's very different. I've done a lot of stuff for Brazil, and it's completely different than how the industry works in Brazil, or at least it was. I don't know now. Maybe they're all converging.
Cool. So all you guys mentioned that you for some reason moved to the US to either, you know, further your studies and get like a different degree, or accompany your loved ones to, you know, and then stuff started happening. One of the questions was, is how did you manage to progress from independent to being, you know, like hustling and trying to get gigs here and there? How did you go from there to being actively working in the industry as a composer for visual media? And I guess you guys have different backgrounds, different experiences, but like, I think the main, what's the main, if there is a main thing that comes to your mind, this is what I was doing when I did the shift, or when a transition happened, right?
I remember when I first moved here, and there was an opening at Hans Zimmer's studio to be his tech assistant. And I knew one of the guys there, and they recommended me. So I went, and at the time, the first Hans Zimmer's assistant was Trevor Morris, who's now a big time composer. So he was right-hand person, and then he was interviewing people for the tech essay. And I wasn't even a tech guy, but I couldn't see another way in, you know. And I went to meet, and they're like, so for you to work here, you have to be available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Hans sometimes wants to write at 2 a.m. and you have to be able to come and show me around, and you have to be able to work this. And for 2 years, you're not going to talk music, because you're not coming here to show his demo or to try and do this. It's like, don't even think about, maybe in a year you'll start getting your feet wet or doing things like that. But for now, you're the assistant. And then in the end, I think it was a joke to this day, but he opened the back door of the studio and he said, and you see all the cars here, we may ask you to wash some cars every once in a while. I to this day, I think it was a joke. I don't think it was serious, but he said that. And then I went home, I'm like, what? Like, I couldn't see a way in. I'm like, what the hell am I going to, I can't do this and just not do music. And so I thought about it over the weekend, and I said, no, there's no way I can do this. Thank you very much. I wasn't 21, or don't get me wrong, if you're 18, 20, 21 and do an internship like that, you're going to learn so much. But I think I was 26 at the time, and I had done a lot of different stuff in music, and I'm like, no, this is, I'm not even a tech guy. I can't do this, but it can be a great learning opportunity. So I've always been like sort of a loner on my own. I worked a little bit, like I said, with Jeff Rona, but I've always played I think what really helped my career was playing the side of being able to go back to Brazil and start trying to get things there, saying that, look, I've done some things in Hollywood. And it's like, at the time, at least Hollywood is like, oh, you say the word, doors open, you know? It's like, you can get a meeting with anyone. So that's how I started getting gigs there. And those gigs, some of those movies opened doors for me here. So that's how I play that side. I never really went to someone, but that story with Hans Zimmer can illustrate a little bit how some young guys are like, and some people do and go through that and end up big time composers, but out there, 90% of the people just get burned out and either leave the industry or go on their own or go do something with another composer. I don't know.
You know, one thing that you mentioned that caught my attention when you first introduced your, you know, the stuff that you do, or your story, your background, was the fact that this all started because you started composing for the short films because of your wife's group of people, right? So that's also really cool. Sometimes it's like unexpected, right? It comes from places where, like,
exactly, yeah.
Awesome. Well, for me, I think that the question is the turning points, right? When you start making, okay. So for me, I was DJing and doing electronic music. And at the time I had a little studio in my parents' house in a gas house on the back. And one of my friends, he was assistant of Antonio Pinto, my friend. Now he lives in Australia. But he was mixing my music in this studio, and I was going to the studio to watch him mixing the music, and I've seen all these preamps, it's compressed. Wow, this is really cool. You know, like this big studio, and I was like impressed by the environment, because for me, I was like, this guy making these beats in this little house studio. So one day during this mixes, Antonio showed up, and we started chat. We became friends. And I was going to play in a big festival at the time in Brazil. I think it's called Beats. And I invited him to come to the concert. And then he invited me to go to the studio. So I was this new guy with the laptop with mashups, Ableton Live. Everything was new at the time. Now it's not new anymore. But he liked the way I worked. It was very different the way he used to work, right? So he invited me to do something with him, and we did the real fireworks at the time, 2009, and then it was fun, the process. That he invited me to score a movie I think 2 years later with him. So that was my first credit in the movie, that BBC movie, The Odyssey. So since that, and I remember, like, before that, I wrote in my notebooks, like, this year I will score a movie. I have no idea why or how, but this just came to me, just happened. So I believe it was a bit of lucky to be in the right place in the right time, right? And the fact I had a different background, you know, electronic music and cinema music started with the hybrid music, electronics with orchestra. So for me, it was a good skill that I was able to apply, and someone that was mentoring me and also learning with me without me even knowing that, you know. And I was learning a lot with him as well.
Yeah. So, now that you mentioned one of the questions that was for you, it was exactly that. Like, if you feel like that being a DJ somehow helped you, you know, the tools that you learned as being a DJ.
Dudu is the junkie Excel of the Brazilian composers.
And even before, when I studied law, I had a law degree. Even that I use a lot. You know, like I think.
Oh, I didn't even know that you have a law degree. Oh.
Yeah, I was a lawyer before. So Steve Jobs said we connect the points at some point in our lives, right? So that's true. Like many times, let's say I record a guitar, sounds terrible, and then I go warp or use the techniques that I learned when I was doing mashups or stretching samples and using recorded material, right? So nowadays the music, I'm more technology guy play stuff, but I use more in technology to transform the sounds. So all these things, stretch, repeat, retune, like it was part of that moment that I used to do. I just have new tools to do this in a different contents to work, but it's for sure it helped the others. And also the fact I was tired of just traveling gigs and sleep one day in the city and then another city in the airplane, and I want to be in one place and stay in one place. I don't want to be traveling, drinking, partying all the time. It was a bit stressful for me. So I chose the studio environment as a home.
Awesome. Mr. Dib.
Turning point.
Yes.
Oh, there's one interesting thing I heard once on a workshop with Alan Silvestri. Somebody asked this question to him. So when was your turning point? When did you make in your career? And he said, and you know, he got an Oscar already, and then he said, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think it ever turned anywhere. And the person asked, what are you saying? And he said, well, it's been like a year and a half that I didn't score anything. So that made me think a lot. And I think turning points are, if I can make a living out of it, it could be a turning point. So I would say I was assisting a composer here in LA and doing the things that, some of the things that Pedro said that I'm not gonna do. And I understand him. And I was older, but I was, you know, I came here around when I was 31 to the US. And I was open. I said, you know, I don't know anybody. I'll do it. No problem. But this guy, you know, things like personal assistant stuff, not music assistant. But I was personal assistant and music assistant at the same time. And then it was funny because this thing evolved to a moment where he said, I was doing some tech stuff for this guy and we are friends until today. And then there was one day that he said, I want to spend more time with my girlfriend. Could you score this for me? And I said, absolutely. Yeah, just give me the cues, you know. So that I started scoring for a show. And then later on, he introduced me to a composer that writes for NBC, CBS, Amazon. And then this composer hired me. And then through him, I started, you know, writing for all these shows. I was not the main composer, but to me, that was a turning point because I was making a living out of that. And those credits also helped me with my friends from film school and people that I don't know. And, you know, when you say, look, I wrote like hours and hours of music for this Amazon show or for this Hulu show or for a CBS show like Criminal Minds, for instance, or Castle for ABC. Then they know that you've been in the trenches and that you will at least deliver something good, right? And so turning point, yeah, I was from that point I was making a living, and yeah,
so that's a cool thing that you mentioned. So do you feel like because you've written for those shows, like you just mentioned, like being in a trench, right? Like, do you feel that makes the film composers look at your work differently, and like he will deliver because he's been to war? Well, that's kind of the deal.
Not exactly, because there's two aspects to it, one positive and one negative. I'm gonna say the negative first. The negative is that they know that you are under someone else's direction, right? So you are not really creatively responsible for what's going on the thing. Even though, you know, you put a little bit of yourself in there, you're basically doing what someone else wants. You're doing really well on time and all that, and high quality standards and all that, but it's what they want. So from that point of view, people may say like, well, you didn't create anything, you know, you're just doing what they want. But from the other point of view, it's what you said. Yeah, they say like, okay, but I know that if I hired this guy, he would deliver, because he knows what it is to deliver a massive amount of music in very little time with very high quality, right? So I guess then it depends, you know, if you're dealing with somebody that could pinch you or you know, label you as a person that, oh, is this person creative? Can they not just mimic someone else's work, but bring something interesting to the table? Well, if you can prove that, then you're fine, you know. And then you have the goodies from the other side, saying like, okay, no, he's super professional, he's gonna deliver, right?
Cool. Awesome. Anybody else wants to add anything? There's a few more questions here. We're good. Awesome. Like somebody asked here, like previous, oh, what did you do before becoming a composer? I guess like Eduardo already mentioned, right? You were a lawyer and then a DJ, and now you're composing and doing all of those together,
Yeah.
right? Do you still practice law as a lawyer, or you just use it
just
on
review
your...
my contracts, basically.
Which is very important.
Yeah.
Do you actually, that's a good question. Do you, of course it is important, but do you feel like because you are the one managing your own contracts, do you feel like composers or artists in general should invest a little time, or they should hire somebody else to do that for them because it's not their specialty? How does that...
I have an agent that he reviews the contracts, but I like to read them too and know what's going on. But also when it's not work related with films, like other stuff, I can do, for networks, like if it's advertisement stuff, then I do myself, or producing someone, releasing a record. So I think it's good to know, and you need to know terminologies of what you're doing. Otherwise, why you work for, right? So you work for money or for payment. So those contracts are exactly talking about this. So you must be aware of what the terms means, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's very important to know the basic rules of the industry and how it works. What are mechanicals? What are publishing?
Yeah.
You go on your own publishing. How that, like, if you go into it blind, it's just too easy for people to take advantage of, or at least, I mean, I've always had the interest of knowing more about what I'm doing. And not only that, I mean, like Dudu said, having an agent, it's not only about him reviewing it for you, but it's about also putting an isolation between, I mean, you want your relationship to the producer and the director to be a creative one. And ideally, you don't want to talk money, and you don't want to say, oh, my payment hasn't arrived yet. This thing, I know in Brazil, I talked to a lot of composers in Brazil, and they don't have, this basically doesn't exist. Most of the projects I do for Brazil, I negotiate myself too. So it's not as easy as here, but whenever you can, if you can have some separation and keep the creative stuff between you and the director, or you and whoever is calling the shots, and talk money, or to have someone else to talk money, or you talk money to someone else instead of disrupting a little bit the creative thing, it's very helpful. So ideally that's the case. And the more knowledge you know, the more knowledge you have, the better it is for you to understand what's going on, right? And understand what you're okay with and what you're not.
Yeah, I agree too. It is good to know at least a little bit, you know. It's like I guess anything else you don't know in life, if you don't know any law terminology, just but you know English or Portuguese or whatever language you know, so get the contract and read it, you know. And if there's something very strange that you have no idea what it is, it's good to know, because it's good to have somebody, you know. I have a lawyer that looks at the contracts for me, but I don't know, I just want to know as well what's in there and understand every line that is in there, because I think it helps on the, you know, to translate better to whoever is dealing with the money part, what you want and what your goals are. And yeah, you may there were situations where for instance, if I didn't know what was on the contract, I would just have given everything possible that was not supposed to be given, right? But because I, you know, took the time to read and go back and forth with the lawyer, then they said, we were like, oh, no, this cannot happen. And then I got a better deal in the end, you know. But it could go down the drain if you just ignore it. It's like, oh no, you know, contracts is not for me. Here's my signature. No, it's a bad idea. Just get to know your stuff.
I have a question regarding all that you guys have spoken, and that is, here it appears, and I know on the music side of being a guitar player or a producer, there's a very clear separation of roles and what you're expected to do and what you're not expected to do. Do you find that and there's also a very clear communication of those roles. Your role is this, and you do A, B, C, D, and that's it. We don't want you to do anything else other than what's in the contract. Do you think it's a cultural thing? And I'm going to speak about Brazil because we're all from Brazil, but I'm sure different cultures have different aspects of that, where there isn't such a clarity of communication and role assignments, like where you're expected, we're hiring you, but you know, I thought you knew what we were hiring you for, kind of thing.
My view on that one is that it might be not like what you would imagine directly, but I think it has to do, it's just an interpretation. It has to do with the size of the economy, right? The US is so big that you can specialize a lot, and that's fine. You know, in Brazil, like I mentioned, I was working for an audio post-production house. You know, we say studios, but those companies used to do everything audio. So they created and produced music. They took care of the mixing, recording, and designing sound effects, and recording voiceovers and singers and actors, and then put everything together. And guess what? People working in there, and I know Eduardo knows very well that sometimes you are there and they say like, well, but can you take care of the sound effects? And you say, oh no, but I'm a producer. I take care of the music. No, you just go there.
This was more in advertisement, for sure.
In the advertisement, right? Of course, I think in long forms like films, you wouldn't expect that a composer would do the sound effects, but it was interesting because when I got to Chicago, I did an internship in a studio, and it was only a music house. That studio only did music. So, and it's very common here to have a studio just for effects, a studio just for mixing, a studio just for music. So that's my take, is that it has to do with the economy, the size of the economy rather than the culture.
But even in dealing with exclusively music, for example, there's very different roles. Like when I did Tropa de Elite, Elite Squad, I met with Jose, and Jose, one of the reasons he came to me is because I had produced bands and things like that, and he wanted to re-record Tijuana, and he wanted to re-record the Happy das Armas, and he wanted to use a samba school and do all that. So he needed someone who could produce a track and who could also compose the score. And he also wanted someone to talk to him about licensed tracks, because here there's a music supervisor who's like, okay, these are the tracks they not only suggest creatively the tracks you can license, but they also think budget, how much you can spend, how much a track by U2 would cost, and how much a track by this other band would cost. Or if we can't have this one, they will find similar tracks that will work, that are much cheaper. So in Brazil, there's no such thing. Like a composer will, at least at the time I started in Brazil, was doing everything. Like I would sit with Jose, oh, what do you think of that song for here? Can we get, and then someone from his office would call and try to get a licensing quote. I wouldn't do that part of the job, but we were doing all things creative, music, and all things like even sound effects and ideas like that. We were always sitting with the editor, with Daniel Rezende and with Jose, and the three of us were talking everything sound and music and ideas and songs. And here usually you go into a spotting session on a TV show and there will be a music supervisor there. So maybe you can throw an idea out, but usually the music supervisor does their part of like, these are the songs we could license. This is what we're going for. This is the, and I would talk score almost exclusively, you know? And then if a track needs to be re-recorded or then they would either see if the composer is able to do it, but a lot of times they will go to a third-party music producer who will then record that track and do that thing. So it's a little more separate, and there's more, you know, the studio thinks you can only handle this part and this is your job and this is what they want you to do. And of course, with time, if you do 3 seasons of a show and then you want to do a song, maybe they'll let you do a song together, but it's a more clear separation of duties here than in Brazil, for example. I can't speak for other parts of the world, but for sure from Brazil, it's very different.
I would say that about this limits of why they hired us. The contract will be very specific about it. Like, let's say, even if I finish the project, I deliver, they ask me to redo an entire episode. The contract predicted that kind of thing. For example, they will have to repay for that production. And also, one thing that I see the production also respect. If you do score music, let's say I'm Latin orchestral score, and there is a techno song in the middle, they won't ask you to do this techno song. They will license that for sure. They don't even ask you for that. At least in the productions for Europe and US. But I remember in Brazil, like I had to make a hip hop in the middle of a
everything starts coming back to you. Everything starts coming back to the composer. Oh, we can't get that song. Can you do something? We can't get this.
Yeah, there is this situation. Oh yeah, the budget is limited for this license. Can you do that? But if you said no, this is not what I do, they understand. Yeah. Again, in this market here, for example, in Brazil, they will cry. Come on,
come on. Last year,
I pay with you.
I did. Just sorry, Dudu, I'm interrupting you, but I did a series last year that was this. Like, it was like super thriller kind of thing, and then the director said, "But could you do like this track here? It's like a Brazilian funk." It's like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Oh, but this is fun to do. It's so fun.
Yeah. We're usually happy to do. When I did RoboCop, there was a show within a show. So Samuel L. Jackson had a TV show, and then there was like the opening track of the TV show, and you know, like a radio show. How do you call it? The opening of the TV program. And then there was a whole debate. Like, they didn't ask me to do it, but Jose and I wanted to do it, to do something different. But they wanted like a regular licensed track, and they would ask either someone else or license it from a library. So it's very separate here, which is, in a way, I mean, it's good, but also sometimes we want to have our hands in other things, or especially if we have a budget to pay or to hire musicians, we're happy to do different things. And
did you end up doing the opening show song?
No, they ended up getting a full. We did a version, and they wanted something like very stiff, very like television, and then they're like, no, we've got something, don't worry. But we had this idea of mixing the old RoboCop music, the original RoboCop music, on the opening of the TV show, but it ended up not. We used it in a different way, but not for the specific minute or whatever of the opening show that they had.
Got it.
I remember one situation that I refused. The only situation that I remember refusing to do something was a film that I've done that the director really liked one temp track that I hated, and I did something different. And then he said, I like the temp, can you do something similar? And then he came, can you re-record the temp, like your version of the temp? We get the rights of the composition and you replay. And I said, in this case, it's better to you license the music, because it's not completely different of my taste and what I like and what my vision on that. That was the only situation I remember now that he said, and then it was okay. He said, "Oh, no problem. I'm gonna use the license this key in particular."
Yeah. Cool. All you guys touched up a little bit on two subjects that, you know, that are basically talking the questions that I have here, and some people also asked. You mentioned having an agent, and you mentioned budgeting. So these are two questions. First, do you have agents? How do you find agents if you have agents? And this, I'll go for the next question after this one, because the next one is probably bigger. So agents.
So my answer is shorter, so I'll go first. I don't. I'm talking to one right now, but I do not.
Well, yeah, I have, but they found you. They find you. Well, I have, because I was working with Antonio. He was my mentor in the thing, and consequently, I ended up following his path with the same agent. This is one way to be with someone representing you. Or if you are an artist, let's say we have a rock and roll band that someone decided, oh, this rock and roll band is going to score. It can be a different situation that people can look at you in a way that you need someone to help you.
Yeah, I have an agent. I've gone through 4 or 5 agents since I've started doing this, so I've changed agents. So my first agent was Dudu's agent. He wanted to get Elite Squad for Antonio Pinto, and Jose is like, no, I'm doing it with Pedro. So then he called me and said, oh, do you need representation? But usually it's that I mean, you're gonna get an agent when it's interesting for an agency to represent you. So I think someone who's starting out, there's no point in them wanting to start through an agency, because the truth is, agents, I mean, they're very helpful in negotiating, and they're very, very helpful in maybe if you want to access to a specific project, or if you want to get your music to a specific production company, or they can help you with that. But you can't count on agents getting you gigs. You know, usually what gets you jobs is what you've done before and the people you've worked with before. It's not going to be an agent who, and a lot of times when you get a good job is a good time. I tell people, use your first job to get an agent. Then you call an agency and say, look, I got this movie. It's an interesting movie. They have some budget. Would you be interested in negotiating for, or then you call an agency, someone you admire, and get an agent that way. Or your movies will start coming out. They'll start seeing your name, and agencies will start calling you. It's usually that way. I don't recommend anyone spending time, unless you've done a lot and you have a portfolio and you have a lot to show. If you're starting out, there's absolutely zero point in an agent won't get you going. In most cases. Some, of course, there's exceptions for everything, but that's my
the agent will be there when you are already doing, you're already working. It's not that you will find someone that will bring the work to you. You will be working, and then you have so much stuff that he will help you to manage. But it's not that he's going to save your life. You're going to find an agent, and suddenly you're scoring a lot of stuff. Yeah. That's not how it works.
Yeah. But they do. I mean, studios here do take it. Like if you're going in there yourself without an agency, like they will look at you like, who is this guy? You know. So they expect, if you're doing high profile things, you're expected to have either a high profile lawyer or an agent, someone. Otherwise, you know, you reach a certain point in your career when you're going out for bigger gigs that it's hard to be there without having an agent. But starting out, that should be the last thing on your mind. You should think about your compositions, meeting young filmmakers, and doing as much as you can early on without thinking about, oh, can I find an agent? He's going to change everything, because they don't. It's your path that brings the agent along, not the other way around.
Yeah, don't let this thing make you upset that you're not working because you don't have certain things. You're not in LA, or you don't have an agent, or you don't have a piece of gear you want. Keep doing what you can do with whatever you have in hands.
That's beautiful. And actually, I think that the most important is what you're just saying, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you're in LA or just like keep creating, keep working, keep looking for opportunities, and things will start evolving. Yeah. And just like you guys mentioned, all you guys have different backgrounds and have gone from point A to different other points. Like Gabriel is now like working with graphic design and programming for VSTs. Who would know, right? Like, and the idea was to compose and stuff. So I think it's really powerful that what you said, Eduardo. It's really cool. Part of Beatrice's question was also, how do you become an assistant composer?
For me?
For any of you guys. That was part of the question. Having a manager or agent, and then how do you become an assistant composer?
I was an assistant composer in the very early stage when I was doing this movie from BBC that I told you, my first movie. I was in the front credits, and don't even know how hard it was to be there in the front credits. I had no idea. And then after that, the movie, Antonio invited me to come to LA to do another movie, but it was a big studio movie at that time. And then he said, well, nobody knows you, and you have to do additional music first, and they will hear about you. You're gonna hang out with us. You're gonna see. And then, in fact, that was probably 3 years doing that for him as an additional composer, learning how to talk with producers and what to say, what don't say, just experience the things, you know, like more watching and quiet watching, learning all these things. That was my school, you know, so that's how I got a gig as an assistant composer. And from that, I start getting my own projects. And after one, it started happening another one. Yeah. But I think it's networking, right? Like it is a good way to end up with someone.
And understanding that when you're serving a composer, what the composer will need from you, right? I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of emails every day of people saying, "Oh, here are my tracks. Can you listen to them? I'd love to work with you and write music for you." And I don't
absolutely.
I don't even
basically they are given to you, right? They're not taken.
Yeah, they expect to get a free break, just like, "Oh, here's my music. I'm the best. Listen to this and give me a gig." And it doesn't work that way. Usually, if you're going to work for a composer, you're going to be there. You have to know, is what I said. The main reason I didn't take the gig with Hans Zimmer, I wasn't technical. I am now. I know how to run my studio, but I still run into trouble here all the time that I have to call a kid or someone who works with me or someone who really knows this stuff and can help me get through whatever problem I'm going through. So it's understand, what do you want to do you want to learn? Then if you want to learn from a composer, the best thing you can do is go work for a composer. Yes, but what can you give to him? Like, what is your knowledge on technology? Do you know all the software, the Cubase, Logic, Pro Tools, Sibelius? Do you understand how software instruments work, how to program a little bit, how to use Contact and those things? Because if you expect to just like, oh, I play a nylon string guitar really well, I want to be your assistant, that's not the person I would be looking for, you know. But usually it's like, you know, the people you admire, you know, the music that they do, the shows that they do, you think it has something to do with you, you feel you're well versed in different things, whether you're a good player who could record some things for him, whether you would know the studio really well and you can help him run techno, and then you reach out to whoever, you know, go on the website, go through. But just so people know, these composers get, I mean, the top guys, I'm getting a lot of emails every day from people like, I'm finishing Berkeley, I want to do an internship, I'm finishing Berkeley, do you need an assistant? I want to work for you, I'm a fan of Narcos, or I'm a fan of whatever game you did. And it's, I mean, we usually do most of the stuff, at least ourselves. And then we count on other talented people that we trust to sometimes bring them in for additional music or to bring them in to help with something else. And then we have, yeah, the interns or the younger generation who are good technologically to help keep the studio running and things running. So
yeah, whatever improves what's missing on us, right? I have a guy now which is I'm training, and he learns fast, which is good, but he also is a very skilled drummer, which is not my instrument. So for me, him being around here, he's learning, but also I have access of his drums skills, So I'm not saying that you need a drummer to play drums. I'm saying that you, like Pedro said, bring a skill set that the composer don't have is a good thing.
Or at least excitement, it's like there's this culture of entitlement nowadays that every kid thinks they're just like, oh, I'm doing this music, can you get it in the film? And just understanding that we've all been through 20 years of like grinding and trying and doing this and doing additional music and trying. And it's, so if I'm bringing someone to help me, it's because, first of all, I enjoy spending time with you. You're a nice person. You are, you know how to relate, you know how to ask for things, you know how to, and also you have stuff to bring to the table. Yeah. And your good attitude, good, I think, Dudu, you're talking about Carlos, right? Carlos Lazari.
Carlos, yeah.
He's
great, right?
He reached out to me too, and we just did a short together that I wanted. A friend of mine has a short that wanted just drums, and then I brought him. But just the attitude, it's like being so like, oh, I love what you do. I'm so excited to do this. If you have anything, just this. Every once in a while, he would send me a track or another track, and then when the right opportunity comes, I got a short that was just drums, and it's like, oh, I know this guy Carlos who just reached out to me. Why not? So it's all about what do you want and how do you feed that process and start establishing a relationship with the people.
But you see, as I told my story, and also as Carlos, we are talking an example. Both had a skill set that we can bring to the composer to share. This is really important.
A lot of great insight. Cool. Thanks for that. The other question that's kind of bigger, it might be bigger, is about budgeting. What do you guys feel, let me read it here because it's kind of like, I know budget varies from production to production, but what would be, what's an ideal situation when you are hired to score for a film or for a series, like on-demand series?
I don't get are they asking the numbers? Because
I mean,
usually it's the other way around. Usually they contact you and they say, this is what I have. Would you do it? If you would do it, what can we get? So it's like, you don't usually, unless it's a big movie, a big studio, which I've had the luck to do some big video games and big movies. And then you can actually say, okay, we want how many piece orchestra? Okay, call. We need to record in London because of the union, and then we can budget something and plan something. 90% of the cases, 95% of the cases, it's like, oh, I have this movie, this indie movie. I have $30,000-$40,000 to do it. What can we get? Can we get some strings? Can you do it? What do you? And then it's a conversation, a creative conversation between you and the guys about what we can do with that money. It's usually not you telling them what the budget needs to be. It's them telling you what you have, and then we figuring out together what we can work with and what we can do. It's usually that way.
Have you guys ever experienced like having a specific, like a set a percentage of the whole budget? This is, we have an X amount of money for the whole production, and we have 10, 15, 20% for music. Deal with it, and you take it, and you.
I want to meet that person. 10, 15, 20%. Really like 2-3%. But the thing is, I think at least for me, looking at the numbers, like Pedro said, they come with the number, right? So you just decide if that's worth your while. If you can. Well, are you making a living with that? Great. is that movie made by somebody that that's gonna really put it out there, you know, if it's a short film, you know, because short films are a great way to get in. Well, like Pedro said, he started with the short films. I did a ton of short films too, and most of them, the directors and producers didn't do anything with it, but some of them they just sent to as many festivals as they could. And then like this, not the last one I did, but one I did a year and a half ago, now was qualified to the Oscars. And that is bringing a wave of connections and things. And if you look at the numbers there, he was well paid. You know, we actually recorded at Capitol Records, so that was fantastic. But of course, the budget for the orchestra was bigger than what was paid to me. But then just for the opportunity to be there, and I knew that the director was going to really market the movie. She sent it to more than 50 festivals. I mean, we got in 50 festivals. She sent to hundreds of festivals. So that's crazy. So I think it's a case by case, you know. Oh, I'll have a lot of fun in this. It doesn't have a ton of money, but I'll have a lot of fun. I always wanted to do something like this. Well, then go ahead and do it, you know. Or I don't like this a lot, but there's a lot of money there. Okay, I'll do it, you know. So I think it's a case by case kind of thing.
Yeah, relationships, or I've done countless things where all of the money went towards the short or a small thing because I wanted to have that in my reel, or okay, oh, maybe this is the budget we have, but I put all the budget towards recording live strings, but I'm at a stage now where I usually don't do that. Like I'm actually going the other way around now, where I do what I record here. I do 90% of the instruments myself, especially now with COVID, or I'll send it to people remotely and they'll record the percussion wherever they are. It's this guy in Houston I work a lot with, Casio Duarte, who's a great percussionist, or I'll send to someone else and we'll do it remotely, and then I'll combine everything in my studio. But there's less and less the opportunity to like, oh, okay, there's this huge budget in one orchestra. We also have a fee for you, and it's usually not the case.
But remember too that there is the royalties after the budget of the production, right? So along the years, we still keep making royalties
performance
productions, which is, I noticed in my statements that the streamer services are lower than television networks, which is something to concern about. I don't know how it's going to be in the next years, how it's going to change.
Yeah, I think it's changing slowly too, because now I've been doing a lot of video games for the past 2 years. I've been entrenched in video games, and video games, there are no public performance, right? But now there's people playing video games on Twitch and playing video games on YouTube, and then your music is playing in the background. So how, I know there's conversations going on, and eventually there should be some royalties coming from those sources, but it's all we're a little in the infancy of this whole streaming and so they're still figuring out how to monetize and how to actually get composers paid for their work.
Yeah, I remember when the MP3 appears, it took like a couple of years to find a solution and then come with Spotify.
Yeah.
But people always find a solution to professionals in the field.
I guess,
adaptations, quickly adaptations, as quickly change, quickly adaptations come up.
Yeah, and each country, like I know Netflix has made a deal with most countries around the world, but there are some countries which they have to negotiate the royalties for each territory separately. So they negotiate US and then they start paying US, but then maybe they haven't negotiated in Asia yet. So all that royalty income is being restricted there until it gets released back to the country. So everything, like it's not just they say, oh, we're going to start paying, and the next day they pay every territory. Everything is a negotiation, is figuring out, and then you have the performance rights societies trying to fight for the composers' monies, and now you have streaming also outside of the visuals, but that's separate, like the Spotify and all the other things. But everything adds up a little bit. Of course, Spotify is ridiculous, the amount of money we get paid for it, but the performance royalties is significant. If you have a big TV show, especially a network show, or if you have a movie in movie theaters, if those things that used to exist, movie theaters that we used to go to. Outside of the US, because the US doesn't pay public performance in movie theaters, but Europe and Brazil and South America, Latin America, it's huge. I mean, if you have a big movie and it plays all over the world, it's significant. You get more money, a lot more money as royalties usually than you get as a fee to write the music for those shows. Yeah. If the movie is really successful and if the show is successful.
It looks like the questions are more about the business rather than the music by itself, right? No technical questions about the music and how it's suffering behind these keyboards.
There's a lot of business involved. I guess you guys already kind of like touched a little bit on it. Richard asked if you do you really make a good living being a composer? I guess all of you guys. I mean, Pedro has a studio. He probably does other stuff that's not involved in composing, right? Gabriel already mentioned you're involved in graphic design and programming. Eduardo is a big deal. DJ. How do you guys feel about
I don't DJ anymore.
You will always be.
Well, I make a living just with music, just scoring music. And when I moved to LA, to USA, the first year was really struggling because you guys, when you move with your bag and your guitar, you have nothing. You have to figure out how you're going to do this. That was hard. And then in that stage, I did gigs that just to do the shit done. Like, okay, I decide that I have to do that. I'm not coming back, so I'm going to do whatever I have to do too. And it goes so fast, so things start happening, and then you're going to do things that you don't want to do anymore. So I'm fortunate today that just making music and things that I like.
I mean, the question, can you make a good living as a composer? Yeah, you can be a multi-millionaire if you're a gamer, or you can do, I mean, the scope is just, it all depends. I mean, everything is involved. What's your skills, your luck, who you meet, what kind of projects you end up doing, and how you market yourself, how you do so. Can you make a good living being a composer? Well, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Make a good living. Much easier to make a good living. I mean, don't get me wrong. The market is very competitive. Everyone wants to be a composer now, whether you just get a garage band and people are calling themselves like, oh, I'm a composer, right? Look at this track that I just built, So what is it to be a composer? It's also.
By the way, like I was scrolling into new libraries that I bought recently in December, and a lot of sounds in the libraries was so simple. Just press the velocity, and I remember doing similar sounds in my keyboards with reverbs, with pedals, and then sampling that, and then, okay, I have my own sound now. And then now you see the libraries, it sounds similar to that stuff. And I was thinking, oh my God, it became so easy. And I'm not saying it's bad, but trying to figure out how to be original without, with so much options around.
Yeah, that's what it goes a little bit with what I was talking about, the entitlement, right? It's so easy now that everyone is everything and everyone expects everything for what they do, It's just the amount of time we spent before there were music libraries trying to make something like a little shitty string library sound good, and the amount of time we'd spend and learn how to use reverb, how to use this, that just feeds as to who we are today and what we're able to do today.
Just an example why there is so many new composers coming all the time, new people. I mean, at least saying,
and the music to get it's very hard. I mean, it's very hard to be an artist in the music. So everyone who's also trying to be an artist or trying to have a record out there, they find out that licensing music for film is good money. If you can get a music in a major production, you're going to make good money. Or if you can, maybe you can also be the composer for. So all these ideas of people trying to somehow make a living or get their craft, get to do what they love to do. What is an option? It's like, film and television is a good option, and it is, but it's very competitive and it's hard. But if you can break in and if you can navigate through all the bullshit and you can do music for someone else and hear, no, I don't like this, do something else. You do the piece that it's like it's your baby and you think it's the perfect thing. No, it's all wrong. Let's go another, detach yourself a little bit from the music for music. You're doing music for someone else. You're being hired. You're listening to notes. You're being able to pull those notes and go in different directions. And then if you're able to do all that and get the good projects, yes, you can make a really, really good living.
Yeah,
it never ends. The struggle, you're always on a grind, like Gabriel said with what was his name? Oh my God, I'm a fan of his, but I'm spacing out. The composer that said, I haven't scored a movie in a year and a half.
Sylvester.
Sylvester. You do a big movie, you think, okay, I'm there. And it's now all the other big movies are gonna, and it's always an up and down and you're always navigating, and you're lucky when you always have things coming, whether they're big or not, but you never, maybe if you're Hans Zimmer, you've made it and that's it. You don't have.
One of the things that Pedro said a moment ago was that, and it's quite easy to forget, is that music for film and making music for film or music for TV is a subset of making music, right? So if you zoom out and you remember that, of course you may say like, oh no, I want to sit in the studio and just score. Go score eight seasons of a like police drama kind of series that you have to write 38 minutes of music per week, for around 8 years, and come back to me and tell me later that if you really want to do that, So I'm not saying that it's awful. It starts amazing, but after a while, depending on your personality, you may get tired of doing that. So, but then you could say, oh, okay, but then you have variation, because then you do a documentary, then you do a romantic comedy. I don't know. It depends on personality. And so can you have a good living, make a good living out of being a music composer? Yes. But then your life also, Pedro has kids. I have I have a daughter. And there's a moment that you say like, well, do I want to get to the multi-million? Do I really want that? Do I need that? And I think the answer will be different to each person. Sometimes you may say like, okay, no, I'm fine in this level. I have my relationships, the rotation of projects is good. I'm happy. Okay. So I think it really depends on the personality of the person. And in my case, for instance, I had these other passions since I was a kid, and I was restricting it. I was not letting them blossom. And because of COVID too, I was like, you know what, maybe I should just go for it. Because I was going with the technology on the side for almost all composers I worked with and for. I was always like programming stuff for them. And then at a certain point, it was like, well, if I don't have a job right now, or I don't have a project, why doing this, and I'm very happy, And in the end, I was so afraid that I was going to stop composing. And actually what happened is more composing gigs came, and now everything is happening at the same time. So I think it's important to be open. Sometimes you say, no, I want to score a TV show. Oh, okay. But go play in a bar, play in a band, or be a DJ, or do an orchestration for somebody, or do something around music. Or for instance, for a while, I was a mixing engineer, a recording engineer, and I was around producers, and you learn, and like Dudu said, then later on things will start, converging to a certain point, and everything is beneficial. So
for sure,
everything is all of these things are beneficial.
By the way, that's when we met each other.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like, doing a Nike campaign.
I was not.
Your engineer.
Yeah, I was a recording engineer in a studio. It was one of the things I was doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get your feet wet and you're doing musical stuff and you're that's what it's all about. You know, if you plan too much, or if you, oh, I want to be a video game. I get emails now because I've been doing some video game. It's like, how do I break into the video game? I'm like, why are you limiting yourself? You know, right. Starting out is hard enough. Just open. It's like, you don't want to be a video game, but you want to do anything related to music.
Having fun, right? Like having fun all the time.
Not be a music whore and anything that goes your way is right for you. No, I'm the first one to say, I don't think I'm right for this. Call someone else, or this is not exactly my cup of tea. Or I'm, you know, when I get those like John Williams scores and it's like, oh, my agent sends me, it's like, do you have anything on this? I'm like, no, that's not. I mean, I love using orchestra, but I love using orchestra my way. I'm not John Williams. I don't want to use it like John Williams. I don't want to pretend like I'm an orchestral composer, because I'm not. I love using orchestra in my things, but in my own way, in a different way than people use the full-on studied composers who write with pen and paper, write different than I do for orchestra. But I love doing it still. So if I get the opportunity, I'll do it every time, every project. But I don't limit myself saying, oh, I want to be an orchestral composer. I want to write like Hans Zimmer, and that's, or like John Williams. And that's the only thing I'm going to try to do. It's really limited. It's really hard to break, to get a break or to get things going if that's who you are. The more you open up, the more chance you have of making it somewhere in this music industry, and which will feed your soul and will still allow you to sort of guide it towards what you really want to do, I think.
I just checked the question, how do I become a game composer?
Yeah, I get those all the time.
Yeah, but that's a great insight, Gabriel or Gabriel.
I mean, it's okay that you love games and you love to compose for games, and it is a huge industry. I mean, I had somewhere that the revenue for games is bigger than TV, movies, NFL, NHL, and NBA, like MLS and NBA together. All of them together, games are making more money than that. So it is something for, it is something for you to get. GameStop especially.
GameStop is definitely doing a lot of money.
Not anymore, but
last week.
Well, I have a tip for just a quick answer to that question. That I actually, and I'm just gonna tell a story with this. 2012, after the summer, my first summer in Chicago, I ended the summer and I scored, I don't know, like 8 short films. And then this class colleague came to me and said, "Man, how did you do that? You know, where did you find those films?" And I was like, "Well, there's Kickstarter, there's Indiegogo, there's all the festivals in the world. You know, you can enter their pages and see who did those films, the nominated films, the films that got the." You know, I think the same goes for games. You know, in 2013, I went to GDC in San Francisco. Man, I got out of that conference with like 200 business cards, you know, and I called every one of those, and that's just for games. And then you start scoring stuff. Just go on Google, get all the companies in the, all of the games you like, you know, check who are the developers. Just get your feet, like Pedro said, get your feet wet. Find the people, email everybody, and before that, make great music, right? Because if you don't, people will not pay attention to you.
That's the thing. Put your things in order, right? For you to be a game composer, you need to be a composer in the first place, or you need to have a voice or to have music that you believe will fit those games. I assume he's asking that question, or he or she, or they're already at that point.
Yeah, and I guess sorry to interrupt you, but I guess this goes for any style of composing, right? Like basically what you guys are saying, like it works for pretty much everything in music. Yeah. Keep going, Pedro. Sorry.
Not that you have to be a master to be able to start. I'm not saying that at all. Just know where you are and know what you're shooting for. You know, if you're starting out, reach out to the smaller developers, the ones that are doing games for cell phones, for smaller things, and then as you grow, you reach the bigger ones. I've, again, been very lucky, met the right people, had done the work, but I've never planned, first of all, to be a media composer, then to be doing games. Now everything is sort of a flow, and yeah, me helping it stir it a little bit, or talking to my team, to my agents, what do you want to do next? Who should we reach out to? So there's always some nudge, but I'm here without any planning to, I knew I wanted to be in music. I knew I wanted to be good in music with whatever I did. I was a player, I was a arranger. Going back to that question that I think we never answered, what did you guys do before you? I've always been in music. I was lucky to never have a job besides like a summer job or a college job outside of music. It's always been, whether I'm like a session musician, I was doing a lot of recording, then I had my own band, I was producing records for like other instrumental bands, I had a studio, then I started doing, so it's, you just find yourself and see where that takes you, and keep exploring and keep doing the work and keep working on the music. Like Dudu said, all the questions are about business, which I understand. When I wanted to break in, all my questions were about business too. All my questions to composers were, how do I do this? Do you need an assistant? Do I get the...
That because they don't teach you.
Your
Sorry,
questions to yourself should be about, how do I make my music better? What music is interesting to me? What do I enjoy doing? How can I get better at that, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's normal that the questions to us would be, how do I break in? How do I make music for... But you shouldn't be asking that to yourself all day long. You should be doing other stuff to move yourself forward, to hopefully when that opportunity comes, you're ready for it. You know?
Yeah, there's a process, and it seems that you have to put your time in order to go through that process. And then once you do that, then when the opportunities arise, then you're ready for that specific opportunity. But if you don't put your time in and don't develop, it's perhaps not as useful to know how to break in if you have nothing to show for. Like Gabriel said, you know, first of all, you have to get and you said too, Pedro, it's like, where am I? And, you know, and okay, I'm here. Great. All right. What do I need to do to get my music to the place where I'm going to be able to get a gig as a composer, or writing for film, or for TV, or for a video game, or for a short film, or for whatever, or an audiobook, whatever.
And
But,
one aspect sorry to interrupt, but one aspect we haven't touched on, which was, I mean, when I came to the US, when I started, I ended up going to UCLA. I'm an American now, but I wasn't an American then. So I needed to have a visa here. So I enrolled on UCLA, first the music production, and then the UCLA extension, the film scoring program, right? So I forget where I was going with that, but
you said something important that we didn't touch before.
Oh yeah, the technology part. So then I finished that program, and then I started, you get the practical training. So you get 1 year, after 1 year of study here, you used to, I don't know if you still do, you get 1 year of being able to work in your field.
OPT.
Usually work for someone else, OPT.
They do.
So, yeah, so I got my OPT, and then it's like, what am I going to do? But then I started getting gigs with that trailer company, and then I would deliver. I bought, before moving here, I had never done music in a computer. All my music was like written, played, write chord charts, do things like that. I had never done music. So I bought a little Pro Tools system, the 001. I started experimenting with it. And then this guy, this music producer, loved in the trailer company, he loved what I did, but I would send it to him and he would say, but this sounds like shit. I mean, he wouldn't say it like that. But he's like, can you go meet this engineer and talk to him about how you record this better? That's a huge part of our business right now. You know, it's like you knowing how to make things sound good, how to be able to do it all yourself, self-contained, especially if you're starting out, not having to, because you're not going to have the budget to bring in musicians and hire an engineer and just write the score on piano and have it played for you. That's not going to happen. You're going to have to know what sample libraries are, how to use them, how to make them sound good, how to use effects, reverb, software, all of that. It's a huge part of our industry, and it's not what you sign up for when you decide to do music, right? You don't plan. I didn't want to be a music engineer. I never stayed, and that ended up being the first 3 or 4 years here was me running against the clock to try and learn more about music production, about engineering, about recording, about how to get things to sound good, to deliver to the level that's expected from composers here.
Right.
And you really learning to use your instrument, which before for me was the the guitar and the violon and then nowadays my main instrument, although the pandemic has reverted me to the guitar a lot, I've been doing more music for music now for my own pleasure. I've been investing a lot, not money, but investing time in that again. But for a long time, it was about how do I make things sound good? How do I use the computer? How do I use this software, music library? And I get calls sometimes. The other day, someone asked me if I could talk to one of their students, a teacher in a music university, and give him, he's like the best student there, and whether I could give him a tip. He wants to do music for film. And I talked to a guy on the phone. He didn't even know what a music tempo library was or what Spitfire was or what this was. It's like, you're not going to be able to do it writing music on paper and writing piano. And maybe at school you can get a few musicians together and go to the studio at Berkeley or at whatever and get it recorded and put it in a, but realistically you have to be able to use computer, to use software, to record yourself, to play a few instruments,
you're already
know how to orchestrate. You have some strengths and some weaknesses, but the more you know, the better it is ultimately for yourself, right?
Guys, excuse me for 1 second. I'll be back.
Go for it. I was gonna say, Pedro already.
It's not too much talking. Pedro talks too much.
Great.
Pedro already kind of answered to a couple of questions here by Richard. Richard asked if reading music is important, or do you like if you don't read music, what is the chance of getting work?
Not related at all. I mean, it's important depends what kind of work you want, right? If you want to be an orchestrator, you have to be able to read music. I think notate music and know how to notate what you want people to play for you is important, or nowadays the software can do it for yourself. But sight reading itself, like being able to read, it's not important at all. Gustavo Santaolalla is my neighbor here. Is like his studio is very close to mine. He can't read a single note of music anywhere, and he doesn't know how to write music. He doesn't know anything like that, and he became one of the top composers here. So it's irrelevant, but it helps. It's one of the other weaknesses or strengths that you may have that may come in handy. Or I think if you're a very good reader and writer, you're gonna end up doing a different kind of music than Santaolalla does, which is mostly guitar oriented.
Yeah, it's different tools. Everybody has a different toolbox.
Yeah, I'm a terrible sight. I mean, I was never able to sight read. I was always terrible sight reader. I can write what I want to know, and I can look at a chart, at a score, and see what's going on. And if I hear the music, I can see the move. I know how to read and how to write music, but I'm not a good reader or sight reader or anything.
Yeah, I think another aspect of when people ask if it's important to read music, sometimes the next question is, oh, is it important to know music theory and all those things? Just like Pedro demonstrated with Santaolalla, no, it's not. It's not necessary. I worked with a producer in Brazil that he didn't know what a C major was, but he was a sideman to Shakira for a while. He could play any instrument you gave him. You know, he was an amazing guitar player, amazing bass player. He was an amazing singer. He could play the drums. So while I was, working alongside this guy for more than a year, I noticed that he was focused on things that people that study music theory or reading or all that, they will have to go through at some point. So I think that people that skip the music theory, they go directly to that point. That doesn't mean that music theory and reading is not important. It is. They're tools. You know, they expand your vision. The thing is, those are steps. Those are all steps. And if you want to be a great musician, a great composer, in the end, you have to go through all of them. You know, so I would say just get them out of the way. You know, just learn them. It's not rocket science. You know, reading music. So yes.
Adds to your vocabulary, right? It's like if you know theory and you know the chords and you know the scales and you know this, it's important for writing, for you to want to express a certain mood. You want to do a modal piece, in what mode am I gonna? It helps a lot, but it doesn't mean that you can't get that just by feel, just by.
For instance, the ability, or I don't even know if I can call this an ability, or to be a curator of the sounds and the emotions and if you say, for instance, a certain chord in a certain voicing, right? You don't need to know what voicings are. You know, you could just listen to it and say like, oh, I prefer that one than this one, even not knowing the notes. If you know the notes, that's better. It helps, but it's not going to help you choose. So that's a different skill, you know, choosing, oh, I want darker, I want lighter, I want heavier, I want this and that. Or if you are a person that listen to a lot of music and have a large repertoire of things that you can go back to, you know, if you only listen to the same thing, you're not going to, you know, expand your vision as well. And that doesn't depend on having music theory or not. You may listen to jazz all the day long, not know all the scales they're doing, and have a feel for, oh, I like more this than this. But of course, if you learn the scales and you learn the harmony and all that, then you'll be like fully, you can fully connect to that. So I think that's better than not knowing what's going on.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
Well, talking about my personal experience with that is that I learned how to read music when I was 9, and when I was 14, I bought an electric guitar, and then I gave up of reading, so I can't read music anymore because I forgot everything. But I found a way to do music using technology. So with software, I'm able to score music. Even if I play MIDI and then transform into score, people can come here and read and play what I wrote. You know, so I found a way that serves me. So my answer for that question, like the guy said, it's you don't need, but you need to find a way to do what you have to do. It can be so hiring someone, which is the easiest way, but you're going to pay money. You're going to pay someone. But if you have skills on technology, you can do yourself, like one-man bands. You're going to end up not spending so much if you don't have that skill. The fact is, more you know, more you can do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same, even going back to the contract.
And give you a limitation. I believe if I would be able to read music, I would write different music. But I use my limitations to have my own style. And this is, I think that's a good thing. You know, whatever misses on you is going to make you be who you are, because you have strength in other sides, in other fields. We can hear Bruno.
I was just saying we're approaching 2 hours of conversation. There's a few questions here still. It went by really quick, right? Really fast. There's one question from Beatrice. She actually asked a couple of questions, but one of them is really, I think it's kind of interesting, and it goes with another question that I had here in the form. Like, can you guys talk a little bit about the workflow for scoring series? Like, if there's a lot of new music involved per episode, or do you reuse material that you've done? How does it work?
Well, let me start that. I create a way that I work, which is each series. If it doesn't work, I remove from the. Oh, sorry, my series. I said series, and my series start working. So each series, if it didn't work in the last show, I just remove from my workflow. So basically, there's an automation here, which makes me be able to score 45, 50 minutes of music every week. And luckily, not doing notes for the previous episode that I delivered last week. Like usually nowadays, like one episode per week, or one episode for 2 weeks if you're lucky. But templates are really helpful. When I moved here to LA, I didn't use templates. So let's say I want to build a orchestral set. I have to load one by one, and the context was pretty stupid. It took a lot of time. So now I use Vienna. which was at the time DB that told me about this, and then start building my templates. So along the years, I have these huge templates of sounds like synthesizer pads, violins, solo violins, not only orchestral stuff, but scenes and sequences and stuff that I create or stuff from commercial libraries too. But basically it's a compilation of my sounds. So I spent some time playing, if let's say I bought Complete and I spent time digging in what I like and put in there. So when I'm working it, okay, I need the pads. So I have this group of 15, 20 pads that I always use. And then I just drag and open. And then I want the strings, I want the woodwinds. And also everything is already routed to stems. So when I drag something there, automatically all these MIDI tracks and these auxiliary tracks goes to my stems folder. So when I want to finish a song, let's say I spend 2 hours scoring the song, I just double click this group of stems and I have the stems, the master, everything really fast, like automatically. The reverbs, the names, everything is done automatically. So this is, for me, is a very important thing that makes me be able to score music fast, because it's basically it's like you have a keyboard and you have 2 buttons to keep the sounds you already spend time. And when I read the names and I know what it is, because I build it one by one. But if you take a look, it's like a huge list of track presets in Pro Tools. But the fact is everything is already designed to work in a way. It's really fast. And also a software that you can do it for free in Google, a Google Sheet. I use one called Cue Chronicle that shows me the time of the cue, the time codes, and how the length of the cue in minutes and seconds. And at the end, I have a deadline that I feel, let's say I have until Friday, it's Monday. And it shows me, okay, you have to score 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes per day to be able to finish this on Friday. So I always respect that. And also regarding the reuse of the cues, yes, we reuse a lot of cues. Sometimes editing, let's say, okay, we view that cue and then that cue is going to repeat in the 2 episodes later, but without the drums or so we have this music written. So we import that in the new picture and it just edits, right? But before that, to do all this kind of technique and workflow, I usually start working a bunch of themes, like 2, 3, 4, 5, depends, like Sample, The Devil Next Door, for example. I wrote, I think, around 10 themes, and these themes became the series, and I just had to create new elements that I didn't have at the time, like something more thriller, something more dark. I just have something more uplifting, something more dark, some emotional here. So these themes, the notes, the crazy ideas, I already spent time doing that. It's not that I play the picture and I score, look into the picture notes by notes. No, I usually watch the picture, do the spotting notes, close my eyes, and then I write music having a big picture and bring emotions. Okay, so I have one for that moment. This is a very emotional relation with the character and the mother. Oh, I have this dark cue, which is when the character becomes a villain. And I have this. So these elements are enough to build this course. So let's say I have these two elements in the picture, different moments, they appear in the picture, but in certain moments of the story, they get together. So I get this part, that music part that I create for this character and this character, and then I blend, just change the key, repeat, transpose. So, and then the music is, wow, if I have to write this like just from my head without this concept of like a puzzle, I don't think I would be able to. And sometimes the editors or the music editors or even the editors, they get these stamps and they start puzzling and mashing up stuff. And then suddenly, wow, this is just, they got this, I didn't think about it. They got the strings from this cue and put the drums of this, and then it just adjust and I have something new. So basically, if you have music for each kind of things in the story, along these things get together in the story, you just need to tweak here and there, speed up the tempo. So that workflow, if when you do one series, you learn that. And again, Siri start working here. I need to work it out of my accent. So you learn these skills and you keep applying each project you do. You more and more experience you have, so faster you'll be able to do it. Each person has a different way to work, and that's doesn't really matter if you're able to deliver the music.
Yeah, I did a very opposite process than Dudu did in one of the series I worked on for Universal Channel. I wanted to do it that way. So I said to myself, I'm not going to repeat anything in this series and let's see what happens. I'll tell you the end of the story. I almost died, because every cue had to be like, even if I was recording one percussion and I knew that I recorded that percussion like 10 times, I was like, the rule is do not get the loop and put it there. So
you're brave.
People would say, this is not intelligent. No, I wanted to force that. So I went from the hardest possible. And then I said, okay, from here, what can I improve? Then from here, I jumped to like the extreme opposite, like reutilizing everything everywhere that I could. So I think it's also a matter of how you want to approach a certain project, right? So definitely what Dudu said, I did that to another show, which is you write all your themes, you have them and like a longer thing, like 3-4 minutes of that theme. And then you have 10 of those. Then you start looking at the story, the puzzle of the story. Oh, okay, we have this character, that character. And then it's so much easier when you see everything as how the pieces will combine, and then of course you not being a purist and say like, oh no, I'm not gonna, I have to write all the music from scratch. No, you don't. It's not a tour de force. You are not a music athlete. It's fine if you say, okay, I'm gonna get the stems from here and then add one instrument on top. If it works.
Or sometimes we're recording, like let's say the original is just guitar, and then again here appears as a piano. The music you already has been written.
Even if you were instrument, you at least the notes, so that speeds up the process. So yeah, I think it's important to experiment, but to also face things or approach things as and specifically TV series were huge monsters as a big puzzle.
Yeah. You're a storyteller ultimately, right? You're helping tell the story. So the same way the filmmaker goes back to the main character with his wife, or goes back to the main character with his associate, or you go back to your themes, right? You have your way to, you basically inputs an identity to what the character is musically. And then of course, if the character is under a different situation, it'll be a different music. But as a storyteller, you don't want to be just, I think what Gabriel was saying, even when he was recording everything again, he was still going back to probably existing themes, right? But you were re-recording everything from scratch. It was just more of an exercise, which I admire your discipline, and I admire Dudu's organization of having like templates and the score tracker and this and that. I'm a bit of a disaster with all the I have a bunch of templates, but I find myself a lot of times opening something new and starting from scratch, and it does eat a lot of my time. But ultimately, yeah, series, I mean, the more thematic you're able to get, the more I think you're able to tell the story the proper way, and also with the cohesion of sounds, right? You determine initially, you read the script or you get the first cut, and then what's the sound? What does the director want? Instrumentation, colors, and you sort of stick to that generally to a palette of sounds, and it can change season by season and can change. I try to always conceptually say, okay, what is Narcos? Narcos is it's like a spaghetti Western, you know, the Americans are in this little town taken by the bad guys and trying to help. And we want to use, so I want to use some spaghetti Western influences in it, but I want to use Colombian instruments and some rhythms, but on a mainstream score. And then season 2, it's like, oh, the Americans are starting to win. So then I put more of the pedal steel, dobro, like some American roots, American instruments along with the Colombian stuff. Because it's, and then third season, it's like Cali is electronic and they were dealing with New York and Miami. So we started introducing some pulses and synths and things like, so I always start conceptually from like, what do I, in my conversations with the director, what do I think the music should be? How big, how small, electronic, organic, orchestra, no orchestra, few players, just myself. And then from there, I start building the score and establishing the themes. I also try to start with a few themes, the main characters, send it to them, and then hopefully those themes start getting used throughout the show. And it becomes easier because you establish themes early on, and then as seasons go by, you can always go back to your storytelling bucket to pull things and not have to do things from scratch every day, right? The blank page for a writer, for a composer, it's daunting a little bit. Sometimes I open, even when I'm starting something new, I open old sessions with music there already, just to not be totally blank and be able to start from something, you know, instead of having like a completely blank page in front of me. And then the end result is nothing to do with what was there in the beginning, but at least it got me started in a direction, or assuming it's the same sound or style that I'm going for. So
I was reading a book some time ago about writing, and the writer of this book, he said that if you have a blank page and you don't know how to start, if you have certain workflow, that certain steps that you always use to write, even if you're not inspiring, you are able to write. And that's true. Like sometimes we have to write music, but we are not feeling inspired as artists, like spend 1 year to do one song. But we have so many trick box ready, you know, that, okay, I'm going to use that sound and that pulse that I'm tired to use. Okay, I have to use that percussion again that I told myself I never will use this again because I'm tired. And you do the work and it works, you know, like the thing, it works when you put on the picture and the client sees it and they like it. But sometimes you want to do I want to do a crazy project. I want to be a different version of myself. And then you know, feeling like so tired of scoring so much music in a short period of time that you start using these tricks that you developed along the way.
Yeah, as a film composer, there's no inspiration or wait for inspiration. It's
and every day we must do the most exciting music we ever done.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. And every day I sit down and I have a scene and I finish that scene from beginning to the end. Whether like, of course, in the beginning, sometimes you try some ideas and they don't work, but then once my instinct says this is the idea, I'll go with it and I'll finish the scene with that. Even sometimes towards the end, I'm like, oh, I don't think it's right for this. Maybe I'll write some, but I finish it the next morning, I listen to it. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I start again? Do I do something else? And those things that you don't use will ultimately get used somewhere else. So, you know, there's no waste. Everything is reused, or you start a new project and you're like, wait, those cues that I did for that the director didn't approve could be perfect for at least the drums or this or that. So you open that and then there's no wasted work. You know, it's good practice. So every day, sit down, write something, write a scene, beginning to the end. Don't start questioning it, abandon it halfway through, finish it. The next day you hear, if you like it, great. If you don't, do something else and save that for another time when you go back to that track and keep doing it. That's the inspiration. It's transpiration, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, there's a few questions, but we're gonna finish with 2 questions because it's already a couple of hours of conversation, and these guys have busy lives and families. One is very simple from Jan. Do you guys have any book recommendations to help, you know, like to help us go through the composer media journey? Anything that's inspiring that you can remember? It doesn't have to be a book.
I have one good that I'm reading right now, which is it's not necessarily about film scoring, but about music, which is this one. It's a really good book.
That's the book I was gonna say too. It's not about film scoring.
It's a really good book, guys. See, like we have already 2 recommendations of the same book.
I've never read a film scoring, or I've read like music business books and things like that. There's a music how all you need to know about the music business. If you don't know, like we were talking about the legal stuff and knowing what types of royalties, publishing, this and that, know your stuff, you know the industry you're getting into. Although this book is probably outdated now with all the streaming and new technologies and new, but yeah, just
I'm a bookworm. I love reading books, but I would tell you that the most effective thing for anybody, at least from my point of view, is listen to what you like and try to reverse engineer it. Okay, so if it's orchestral music, John Williams, like how does he do it? Oh, he studied with the masters, you know, the classical composers like Debussy, Ravel, Rachmaninoff. Go learn what those guys did, you know. Oh, I like action movies. Watch a ton of action movies, listen to the score, see what are the references of these composers, and learn how to make that music. You know, books are great. I love them. I always recommend like read as many as you can, but just go directly to the source. You know, if you want to score movies, watch movies, listen to the music in the movies, listen to the music that inspired that music in the movie, and learn how to make it. That's it.
Perfect. And last one, just to end on a more, let's see, what are some of the not so pleasant experiences that you've had in your journey? And you probably said like, wow, I wish I knew.
I had one recently for what I was doing a project, a series, and then start the pandemic. Every time I say series open here.
You sure?
So I was doing this, and then the pandemic came, and then I start another series, and then I ended up getting a movie too. I was in the last 2 episodes of the show. I thought, okay, I'm able to do this movie, but during the process, the director, she didn't like anything. And it wasn't bad, you know, like was a different perspective. But it became so exhausting, the notes, the huge emails, the sometimes very rude, that I was waiting to be fired. I was saying, I want to be fired. But ended up like someone else joined the project and finished that. But it was really stressful because we can't agree on anything, and she was angry all the time. You know, like it was sad, you know, because it didn't work. But it was really unpleasant. You know, like I have to deal with that, and it has been really hard all the time. It will happen, like if you want to make music. It's not glamorous all the time. It's not every project which.
And not only that, I mean, it's so hard.
Going people.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
It's not all the time there's easygoing people to work with. Sometimes it will happen. You will get the project that you said, Jesus Christ, I want this to finish. Unfortunately, we all the composers I know, like friends, like everybody pass through this at some point. So for me, that project was really hard, like to deal with.
Yeah, it's hard for a creative, whether it's a director or a producer who's not a musician and they've worked so hard on their movie and they put it together and then now it comes time for the music, who they think is which they think is going to save their project, and then all of a sudden it's like they can't express what they want and you're not delivering exactly. It happens all the time, you know. It's like, and that's why there's so much turnover in our profession. Like all the top composers, myself included, have been replaced on movies and different projects, and it happens all the time. But sometimes it's just a different sensibility, or you guys don't speak the same language, or you try a few different things and they're not happy and they don't have the time to keep going down this road. Or I had an experience with Gabriel a while back when I did a movie, a Diane Keaton movie for a friend of mine who's a director. So I did the whole movie for her. She was in love with the score. We were very pleased. I liked the movie. And then the movie got bought by a studio, by a production company, bought the movie. And then the producers in the movie are like, oh, we think this score is too indie. Can we go more mainstream? And I had done the whole score for I had scored the whole movie. They had very little money. And then they're like, we don't have any more money. Can you rescore the film? And I was so burned out. I was like, okay. I called Gabriel. I think, Gabriel, I think this is good for you. Help me. Let's reinvent this music. Let's do it together. I don't want to go through the whole thing myself again. So we did a lot of cues again. And then the movie got sold to another studio. And then the studio bought, and it's like, no, none of these directions are what we were going for. We want something new. And I'm like, I'm not going to score this movie a third time. There's no way. So we came to a mutual agreement that I would just leave. They paid me
we say that's not our project.
Someone else and did the score. So that happens all the time. And the director was a friend of mine. She was very pleasant to work with. We still are friends to this day. I don't know if we're going to work together again or not, because it ended up burning us both a little bit, but it happens all the time. And it is what it is, you know, as long as you can know when it's not, you can't keep going, because it's going to have either me or them, or someone will just blow up at some point, and I don't want to do a third score for the same movie, and they don't have any more money, and I can't reinvent myself again. I'm done. So that. Yeah,
when we stop having fun in the project, and it's really hard, you know. In this situation, I said, okay, there was not my project, so it's a movie. We don't want to destroy the director's project. You know, it's not fair. You know, but it can happen. So
yeah. I had one experience that I can't say that it was a bad experience, but it was strange enough to be worth telling. It was in commercials, actually. I was writing that in particular was not a commercial, but it was for a Cinemark, the chain, right? They had the security movie that goes before the movies, right when you get in the theater, and it was going to be watched by the millions of people. And so these guys, they had an animation, right? And they said, we love like sort of Django or Reinhardt kind of gypsy jazz. And I was like, okay, I love that too. They made the gypsy jazz, made the whole thing. It was sort of a musical, so number of characters singing, multiple voices. They said, but could it be like a little bigger? You could maybe put like a big band. I thought, well, big band on top of that, yeah, it works. So I did, big band arrangement, all that, recorded. It was really nice. And then these guys come and say, I don't know, maybe should be more like Disney, more like orchestral. So scrap all that, make the whole thing orchestral with all the voices and everything. Then in the end, they said, yeah, but we like, like a cappella singing. Like, wait a moment.
Oh my God.
So I made an arrangement that it wasn't take 6, it was like take 8, like lots of jazzy chords and all that. And then in the end, they said, like, you know what? How about we just put everything together? Put the Django with the orchestra, with the take 6, and that's what went, so the process was very, very strange. At every step, we almost wanted, to just give up. But in the end, I mean, it was funny, It's strange. It's like a fruit salad, all of the salads you can imagine with beans on top. Something really strange. but it worked.
Yeah. Yeah, the important thing is how you navigate all of that, right? Being a film composer or a film TV media composer, you're ultimately, you're the composer. You're also a little bit of a psychologist because you're like, you know, the music needs to save the scene. I didn't like how the actors acted on the scene, and it's not emotional. It's not, can the music fix that? And can the, and also can the movie come together? It's a little bit, each part was shot in a different place and it doesn't look, can the score give it unity? So you're always trying to, you know, they put a lot of chips in you to save the project or to make it even better, or it's the last step. And it's, so you have to be patient, know how to communicate, know how to accept that a lot of your kids are going to get thrown out and you're going to have to make new kids and do things. And it's a process, you know, and it's how, and with experience, and of course, the further you are in your career, the more you can, I mean, I think the more people know what you do and go to you for what you do, and also the more you know how to read the whole situation, you know who you should listen to from all the voices in the room, and and so on and so on. But it's all a learning. Even the ones that I've quit or that I haven't been fired from many, but been fired from or quit or done. It's everything ultimately is a learning experience, and it's part of the process, you know. And it takes you somewhere else, at least shows you what you don't want to do again, or how to deal when that situation comes up again, I think.
Perfect. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me.
Inspiring. Yeah, thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Greco, Gabriel, Pedro. Very, very inspiring conversation. Thank you guys who are watching now or later. I'm sorry for those who asked questions and I wasn't able to go through all of it. I tried to kind of like bring in all the questions, but you know, short time. But anyway, that was very, very insightful, very inspiring. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Dudu and Gabriel. Good to see you guys, to hang out a little bit. I don't know how long it's been that we want to get the kids together with Gabriel, and we've been meaning to do a lunch with Dudu, and
we'll make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Have a great week. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.